the flat felled seam. This one is done again as a very durable seam. You'll see it in sportswear, activewear, workwear, and children's wear because it is so durable. And this one, like the French seam, starts off with your pieces wrong sides together. We are using the 3" by 8" sample pieces. Get that lined up on the right hand edge there. Over to the sewing machine. Put in a plain seam to start with. "5/8" seam allowance. Okay. Now then, with this seam, in lighter weight fabrics, you could skip the step of trimming. In heavier weight ones, or even with this cotton, we're going to practice trimming a seam allowance. But we only need to trim one of the seam allowances. And I'm only trimming it about half the distance, or half the width of what it is. Sorry. Let's continue that all the way down. I find I have best control if I keep that seam line to the back of my cutting hand. If you are left-handed, it would be in reverse, like so. Okay, that affords you the best control. Now to the ironing board. You will find that after every step of sewing, you want to go to the ironing board. You'll spend a lot of time here. Go ahead and press to set those stitches. Now then, when we go to press this one, you will press the longer seam allowance over the shorter one that you just trimmed. If you did not trim one, it really does not matter which direction you press it. But we will see a row of stitching here. Now this is where the tricky part comes in. This top one is going to get folded and tucked under your trimmed one. And it'll be approximately 1/4 inch. It's much easier to control on this smaller piece. But that seam allowance is wrapping around over and tucking underneath that shorter one that you trimmed. Once I kind of have that in position, then I can press. This does take a little bit of finesse. You may have to do a couple inches at a time as you tuck and press. I'm sorry if I hide a lot of that. It's just hard to do. There we go. Now, with that little edge pressed, tucked underneath there, we are going to come in here and stitch very close to this edge, the folded edge. So back at the sewing machine, we are going to get this underneath the needle. Now, to kind of line this up, it's actually easier to see if you keep your presser foot up. Make sure you have good long thread tails. Go ahead and rotate your hand wheel to insert the needle in. This way underneath here, you can't see it from the camera, but you sitting at the sewing machine would be able to check and make sure that your needle is very close to your folded edge. You're looking to be no more than 1/8 inch, but about 1/16 inch at that folded edge. Once I have that inserted, I go ahead and make sure I lower my presser foot so I have good pressure on my fabric, and go ahead and get started. Now this does take a little bit more practice. You do not have a seam guideline to follow, but you do want to kind of watch your folded edge alongside the edge of your needle. To the end. My needle is sounding a little dull. Can you hear that thumping sound when it hits the fabric? That's a good indicator that it's time to check and change your needle. There we go. That is the flat felled seam. It has 2 rows of stitching seen on the outside of the garment. Look down at a pair of jeans. Usually the inseam, the inside of the legs, has a very durable flat felled seam. This may not be the exact way a industry sewing machine that's made for sewing flat felled seams actually does it, but this is a great home sewing technique that gives you that final look.